Hello, and welcome to episode 21 of Sarastro's Star Wars Legion painting series. In this episode, we're going to paint Anakin Skywalker from Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars Legion. Anakin comes with two very different and dynamic poses. When painting him, I'll be aiming to create some interest in the rendering of the different materials, along with some subtle object source lighting. I've also aimed to capture a certain darkness in his expression. Let's take a look at the painting stages. Assembly of the miniature is pretty straightforward. You'll just have to decide which of the two upper body poses you'd like to use, as well as which of the two heads, each with a slightly different expression. I've then chosen to prime the figure in black, followed with some grey and white zenithal highlights applied from above as usual. We'll then apply the base colours, and I'll be using some of the Scalecolor paints for the softer sections of fabric, as they have a super matte finish. I'll also be providing a gentle blue gradient for the lightsaber. We can then provide our highlights, where I'll be aiming to further differentiate the different textures on the outfit, whilst providing a controlled amount of object source lighting along the way. And we'll take a look at both of the poses whilst doing this. Let's jump in with the base colours. I'm going to begin by painting the trousers using Scalecolor's black leather. This may appear somewhat purple, but will ultimately just be our shadow tone, as I'll be highlighting up with some more reddish browns in a while. You don't have to use the Scalecolor paints, of course, and any dark purplish brown would be fine. I'm just looking for ways to vary the finish, since the outfit is mostly dark, and I'm keen to introduce some variety where I can. For the inner tunic, I'm using Eclipse Grey. This is quite a dark, warmish grey tone. For all of the remaining areas of leather, as well as the lightsaber handle, I'm using a roughly equal mix of Vallejo's black and dark sea blue, and I've chosen to mix in a little of the more purplish Oxford blue. This can be applied somewhat thinly over the more textured areas, such as the right hand, belt and boots, to allow the raised details to appear lighter. I'm now going to paint the eyes using Ivory for the whites of the eyes and black for the pupils. I'm not initially worried about the surrounding area, as I'll be trimming this back with the skin tone in a moment. I'm now mixing quite a dark skin tone using Bugman's Glow and black, and I'm using this to paint the surrounding area, trimming the eyes back as I do so. And I'm now using a lighter mix of the Bugman's Glow and black to paint the rest of the face and the left hand. You can see I've left some dark lining around the eyes. For the hair, I'm using English uniform mixed with some flat brown and a little black. I might freely wet blend some darker tones for the lower portions of the hair. I've now chosen to apply some of Vallejo's brown earth basing paste to the base. And finally, I'm going to paint the lightsaber, firstly by providing an undercoat of Scalecolor's white. I'm now going to mix in some sky blue to create a very pale blue tone. And I'm using this to colour most of the blade, pulling the pigment up towards the tip, and perhaps leaving just a little of the white at the base. I'm now gently increasing the amount of sky blue in the mix in a few stages, gradually increasing the depth of tone towards the upper half of the lightsaber. If necessary, I might hop back to a previous tone to smooth out any roughness in the transition. And just to create a subtle variation in hue, I'm now adding some Tesla blue for the darkest section of the blade. I've also chosen to add a central highlight along the upper front portion of the blade to create the impression of an inner glow. We're now ready to add the highlights. I'm going to begin with the trousers, where I'm going to add an equal mix of Scalecolor's brown leather and red leather to the original black leather base tone. This first layer is going to cover most of the area except for the recesses. This is now the pure brown and red leather mix. I'm now going to mix in some Iroko to achieve some brighter highlights. Using a more yellowish tone for this helps prevent the colour from becoming too pink. Here I'm also introducing some of the lightsaber blue tones to create some gentle object source lighting for the right leg. This is as far as I'd like to take the effect for now. Next I'm going to mix some black into the Eclipse Grey and use this to deepen the shadows of the inner tunic. To highlight the tunic, I'll be adding increasing amounts of brown grey to the Eclipse Grey. Just as with the trousers, we can see that the matte finish is nicely suggestive of a softer fabric. I'm now once again introducing a subtle amount of the blue lightsaber tones for the areas I imagine would receive some light from the blade. For the leather areas, I'm going to begin by simply adding white to the bluish-black base tone. Because this is a more reflective material, I'm going to be pushing the highlights quite a lot further. Here I've chosen to use the Oxford blue to add some more colour interest. I'm now starting to ramp the brightness up, and with some sharper highlights and some stippling, I'm aiming to create a nice leathery texture. I'm also highlighting the belt and the glove along the way. I'm not doing too much with the boots at this stage, as I'll be dry brushing on some sandy weathering here in a while. For the brighter highlights, I'm adding some ivory. We should now be able to see quite a clear difference in the materials starting to appear. I'm now once again introducing our blue tones to build up some object source lighting, and due to the more reflective properties of the leather, I'll be going a fair bit further than I did with the more matte materials. Notice I'm using the same bluish grayscale for the metallic details, but I'll be pushing the contrast all the way up to virtually pure ivory. Next I've chosen to thin down some Payne's Grey ink by Rowney with a fair bit of water. And I'm brushing this over the areas of leather, encouraging it to settle in the shadows as I do. This helps to integrate the layers of highlight, whilst also increasing the depth of the shadows, and imparting a slightly glossy sheen. I'm now returning to add my last few highlights. For the alternative pose where Anakin is holding the lightsaber a lot closer, I'd be tempted to push the blue highlights further still. Likewise for the skin, I'm using the same trilogy of Caucasian skin tones used in the previous episodes, so we'll be highlighting up from the base tone to Cadian Fleshtone, then Kislev Flesh. And I'm now introducing some of the blue tones of the lightsaber for the exposed side of Anakin's face. Here I'm glazing a little of the Tesla blue into the shadows of the left cheekbone. And I'm now applying my last few highlights. For the scar that runs across the right eye, I'm using Bugman's glow mixed with black. For the other pose, you can see I've still introduced some object source lighting, but to a more subtle degree. I'm now going to highlight the hair by adding increasing amounts of buff to the original base tone. And I've also introduced some of the blue tones for the area near the back right. I'm now dry brushing the base with some Tyrant Skull. followed with an Agrax Earthshade and a Fuegan Orange shade mix as usual, and a sprinkling of Army Painter's Brown Battleground over some thinned PVA. I'm now using some light grey tones to highlight the handle of the lightsaber, which I missed earlier. And I'm now providing some dusty weathering to the boots with a dry brush of XV88. This can be lightened with a little buff. And I'm also applying the Agrax Earthshade and Fuegan Orange shade mix. I'm now finishing the miniature off with one or two final highlights and clarifying some of the dark lining. And this completes Anakin Skywalker. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Do feel free to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon to ensure you don't miss future episodes. And as always, you'll find a full product list in the video description below. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Star Wars Legion. Happy painting!